Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. Friend of mine. You remember him as the FEMA administrator back during George W. Bush. Those of you who take in radio or television, you know him as a great broadcaster, one of the best of the Michael Brown Show, The Weekend with Michael Brown. You're all over the place. It is, of course, Michael Brown. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great, Joe. Good to see you again.
It's good to see you, man. You're looking good.
Yeah.
You said you lost a couple of pounds. You look like you're healthy. You sound wonderful.
Good.
I'm hearing nothing but good stuff. You know, I did that show for 12 years, and I just couldn't do 6 days a week anymore. A young guy like you can do 6 days a week. I couldn't do it anymore. But God bless you. The audience loves what you're doing.
Well, great. And you know what? They can hear me. They can find me anywhere. Almost 400 affiliates across the country every weekday from noon to 3 East Coast time. Tune in.
Make sure you go and do that.
You're also on my station in Denver on KL.
Yes.
6 p.m. I come on at 6 a.m. So tune in at 6 a.m.
Well, they needed really good bookends between 6 and 6, so they got it done with Michael Brown and Joe Pags.
Two ugly guys, both of them.
Exactly right. Now, I recall pretty well how you were raked over the coals after Katrina for no good reason.
Right.
I remember, I believe George W. Bush, your boss, called you Brownie. Said that you were doing a great job.
Yep.
But the people of Louisiana, Blanco especially, Ray Nagin especially, were saying horrible things about George W. Bush and the response, horrible things about you. Michael, I wanted to have you on today so you can explain, as the former administrator of FEMA, what exactly is the job? When can you come in? You've got to be called in, don't you, by the state or by the locals?
It's fascinating to me. Carter created this agency in 1979, and people still don't understand what it does. FEMA, to me, is a giant orchestra conductor that has a big, fat checkbook. Right. And so what we do is once a governor says, hey, this disaster in my state has exceeded our capacity to handle it, would you come in and help? And we don't own planes, trains, and automobiles. We have a checkbook, and we have the ability to coordinate, and that's it.
And that's the thing. Blanco did not call George W. Bush for the National Guard soon enough. Nagin didn't call for it soon enough. And FEMA wasn't called in soon enough. So why was it so easy for people to blame you and Bush?
Because we were the face. And I call them the cabal, but when the dominant media is going to go after somebody, they're going to go after George Bush, a Republican, not Ray Nagin, a Democrat, or Kathleen Blanco, a Democrat.
Yeah, but I mean, Ray Nagin literally said, I'm not going to even tell people to evacuate. He said, I'll have 1 million damn people in the street. They were so horribly mismanaged. Lives were lost because you weren't called in sooner.
Right. And in fact, to this day, it still drives me nuts that there's a video that I released to the Associated Press when all this was going on that showed that I had requested Ray Nagin to evacuate his city. Couldn't get him to do it. Call the governor. Couldn't get her to do it. So I literally called Bush down in Crawford. And I said, Mr. President, I have a really strange request. I need you to call, not the governor. I need you to call the mayor and try to convince the mayor. Bush couldn't even get him to do it.
Isn't that something? It's Michael Brown. The situation.us is the web. That's the website, right, Michael? The situation.us.
Yeah, or
.io.
.us.
.io. Okay.
Either one.
All right, go there and go check him out. Also, the Michael Brown Show is on 6 a.m. Denver time. You can listen to him on iHeart anywhere you happen to be. Also, The Weekend with Michael Brown. So, Federal Emergency Management Agency, I always thought that you came in, you're from the federal government, emergencies happened, you were going to manage how the money was distributed, how the help was distributed, you were the agency to do that. Does that have anything to do with illegal aliens?
Not a damn thing.
Well, how did they end up doing that, Michael? Billions of dollars spent on the border from that agency that should help out Western North Carolina.
This is what DOJ needs to start looking at. Because FEMA has something called the Disaster Relief Fund, the DRF, to use Washington legalese. And that DRF usually has at a minimum $30 billion to anywhere, like during 9/11, we had like $100 billion in it. And Congress and politicians see that as a slush fund that they can use to go get things done that they couldn't otherwise get done.
Okay. And they shouldn't be able to because, again, there's no accountability. So when you heard Mayorkas, after the first hurricane hit and Helene was on the way in, say, we don't have the funds. We don't have the funds. He said that on Air Force One or Air Force Two. I think it was Air Force One. And he's in the gaggle, and they've got him recorded saying it. 2 days later, he said, we have the funds. And then we found out over 2 fiscal years, FEMA spent $1.4 billion housing and feeding and clothing and educating and giving money cards to those coming here illegally, breaking the law. When you hear that as a former administrator of FEMA, what goes through your mind?
Well, I have a blood pressure monitor over here trying to stay healthy because when I hear these stories, I literally go ballistic. It's amazing to me how this stuff, even after 20 years, and me screaming at the president. And, on March 3rd, 2003, I sent a memo to then Secretary Tom Ridge, former governor of Pennsylvania, and said,
Right.
if you leave FEMA inside DHS, it is eventually going to fall apart. And it itself will be a disaster. It'll become a slush fund. And I'll never forget, because the response to that memo was, we'll never let that happen. And I thought, bull, you know what? It will happen.
Well, DHS was created after 9/11. Tom Ridge was the first secretary, right?
Right.
So it's formed, and it's supposed to do Homeland Security. Suddenly, It started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think what you just alluded to was they kept on throwing billions of dollars that were floating around into this agency that's now become this behemoth that I'm not sure I know what it does. The Patriot Act should have gone away a long time ago. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but it should have at least been pared down. It was supposed to sunset. The DHS was created out of that. I mean, TSA has gotten out of control. You've got FEMA that we don't know what they do anymore. They're out of funds when an emergency is necessary to be taken care of. So how do you pare it down? I know that Doge and Elon Musk, smart guys, they're finding accountability, but it just seems like it's so deeply rooted in that one department, it would almost be hard to pull it back, because they're arguing, you know this, Michael, it's going to be, Americans will be less safe if you do this.
Oh, exactly. And that's why, and that would be an admission on the part of Congress that we made a mistake creating it in the first place.
Yeah, right.
But what really needs to be done, there were 22 different departments and agencies, everything from FEMA to the Secret Service. So when I became one of the 4 undersecretaries, I had, supervisory responsibilities over 22 different departments and agencies. You cannot do that. It just simply doesn't. Think about the Pentagon. The Pentagon's got, the services, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
22 departments and agencies, it's simply unmanageable. And it's grown as I expected it to grow.
Well, it's not going to slow down either. You actually, you gave us some information on, I guess there was a contract for $500 million to build a new headquarters? So, I didn't even know about this. When did this pop up?
So something made me think about this yesterday, because back in 2004, I think, 2004, 2005, my security detail took me to a place called St. Elizabeth's Hospital outside D.C. It's across the Anacostia River. Okay. It's where John Hinckley was housed after his Reagan assassination attempt. And I was supposed to look at this property because the idea was GSA wanted to build a headquarters here. And I said, this is absurd. You don't have a subway stop. You don't have an interstate highway interchange. You don't have anything. And so I decided last night, just on a lark, to go see what had happened with that. Just last month, before Biden left office, they issued a contract for $524 million. Now get ready, Joe. You're going to have a heart attack when you hear this. Not for the DHS headquarters, for one component of DHS.
Stop it. $524 million for a component of the DHS signed by Biden before he leaves. It makes you crazy. Hopefully, I'll send this over to the Trump administration. You probably have contacts there too. And we'll make sure that they hear what you just said. And that's got to be stopped, obviously. But let's get into it a little bit. Well, when you talk about sending all this money over there, and you talk about Biden doing something last month before he leaves, he did a lot of somethings before he left last month.
Somebody did.
Well, right. It wasn't him at all. And that was the question. Do you think that there's any chance on earth he knew, other than his family, he was pardoning all those people? Do you think there's any chance he knew that he was stopping the drilling on the Outer Continental Shelf and in Anwar? Do you think he had any idea that he was setting up all of this failure for Trump to have going as he was leaving, when you know damn well he was on his way to get an ice cream cone and was going to go lay on the beach or Rehoboth Beach? Michael, you worked in government. Who do you think did all this?
I think that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden did all of it, plus the Obama people that were in the West Wing. And I believe that from the bottom of my heart, because if you understand history, when Woodrow Wilson had his stroke, Edith Wilson literally ran the government.
Right.
And the West Wing, I know it's a small space geographically, but the executive office of the president is really a monster. It's got a lot of people in it. Yeah. And so everybody, when you limit the access to the president, which you should, I mean, the president, just not anybody should be able to walk into the Oval Office, but when you limit it and you say just these 3 people, say Jill Biden, Hunter Biden, and then just pick somebody from the old Obama administration, they're the ones that are just putting things under his nose and saying, Mr. President, sign this. It does. Like Speaker Johnson said, this does a study about LNG, when what it really did was it stopped the export of LNG.
Well, I want to get into that a little bit because what you just said is verifiably true. Speaker Johnson came out just a few days ago. It might have been a little more than that, but he came out and he said that he had a meeting. He asked for a meeting one-on-one with Biden.
Yes.
He asked Biden, why did you shut off the dispensaries or whatever it was, these LNG stations to send over to the EU that we had a contract with in my state? Why did you do that? And he said, I didn't do that. Well,
Right,
no,
he said-
you did. No, I didn't do that. We're doing a study. No, Mr. President, we've got it. And he actually had to show him
Yes.
his signature on a piece of paper that stopped these, our exports of LNG that Trump set up, which made what the EU do what? Go and get LNG from Russia, which is not what we wanted to happen. So, Michael, when we know that, and we know that he did not have a clue of what it was that he was signing, is there any recourse retroactively, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, the problem is the founders set up the constitutional system where the way to fix it is what we're doing right now. And that's electing somebody to replace him and then go in and as a lawyer, I would say most of these contracts can be unwound. There might be a price to pay. Let's take the $524 million contract that's been awarded to something called Clark Construction.
Okay.
If that contract's actually been awarded, you may be able to unwind that with a penalty. But if you pay a $5 million penalty or a $10 million penalty, that's better than paying out $524 million.
No, it really is, and it's a great point. This is kind of what Biden did with the border wall. He didn't even just take a penalty. He paid off all the contractors. Then he started selling the materials at nickels on the dollar. So I mean, so we're looking at it where they did it in the opposite way that you and I think the American people want them to do it. Like the Keystone XL pipeline, when they stopped that, they laid off 11,000 people, but those contractors all had to be paid. So we de facto paid for a pipeline we never ended up getting. Michael, it's bizarro world. Did you see this kind of fraud and abuse when you were in?
Yes. I will never forget the first time that I realized that, oh my gosh, I'm the freaking Undersecretary of Homeland Security. I can do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And then I realized if I want to accomplish 10 objectives, I'll be lucky during my tenure if I can get 5 of those objectives done. You know why? Because even the members of Congress that I like at some point will say, no, I just can't do that because you know what? That's a really big supporter of mine, and I can't do that to him.
Wow. It's so sick. It really is. I mean, honest to God, when we see representatives have their homes, they've got a townhouse there in Washington, D.C. Everybody's on K Street all the time. They're not back in the representative districts. We know that we've lost touch with what the people who sent them there want done.
Yes.
Would you? I want this, but do you think this can happen governmentally? Can we make a rule where they only go there to vote and they have to go back and spend 60, 70, 80% of their time in their district? The fact is, most people have no idea what the representatives are doing in Washington. The people of Kentucky are not happy that Mitch McConnell just voted no on Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. It's like they become these swamp monsters that never have to leave. Can there be a provision, do you think? Maybe not. Maybe this is a pipe dream that tells legislators and senators, go back home.
It may be a pipe dream, but I think what people need to do is when these congressmen and senators come back to the districts in the state and they campaign and they tell you how much they love Godmother and apple pie. And by the way, I need a check for $50 or $500 or $5,000.
Right.
What those people need to say is, I understand we all love Mother God and apple pie, but I want to know, are you going to do X, Y, and Z? Now, they'll give you a BS answer.
Right.
We have to learn to go to the second, third, and fourth level of the question to really push them, because people don't believe me when I say this, but I know it because I've seen it from the inside. They actually fear us, but they think that they've got us so drugged up. I mean that metaphorically.
Yeah.
They've got us so drugged up that we're never going to question what they do.
It is the host of the Michael Brown Show. It's Michael Brown, also The Weekend with Michael Brown, and former FEMA administrator. Let's go back to FEMA. Talk about maybe just getting rid of it. Should we get rid of FEMA? It's not in the Constitution. And should we let that federal emergency management money go to the individual states? Let them manage it. I don't know if they do it any better. They can't do it any worse than FEMA's doing it. Do you get rid of the agency?
I think you could easily get rid of the agency. Because
what do you do then?
Well, you tell the states. I think we've actually made the states weaker because we pass out grant money for firefighters and cops and everything else. And when they get that grant money from the feds, then they take their state or local budgets, fill it with the federal money, and then use that money for, I don't know, to house homeless people or to house illegal aliens or whatever they might do with it. So it makes public safety weaker at the state and local level. Well, you take FEMA out and just say, you know what? We'll give you a block grant for X number of dollars, and you guys have to figure out among yourselves, put together a really robust mutual aid program. And when something happens in Texas, Colorado and Oklahoma and New Mexico are going to come in and help you guys, and vice versa. This country was originally, we are the like Biden always said, we're the United States of America. But his point should be well taken. We're not the federal government. We are 50 individual states
Yes.
that have given certain limited powers to the federal government. I don't think FEMA was one of those, and I think we ought to turn as much power as we can back to state and local government.
Well, I think a lot of that has to, very well said, by the way, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're perverting the meaning of the 14th Amendment. Equal justice under the law, due process under the law, that somehow circumvents the first 9. And it doesn't make any sense. The 10th Amendment made it clear that what you just said is true. If it's not in this document, the states get to do it. But they've taken the 14th specifically to do things like gay marriage and abortion and everything else. So at the end of the day, you think you can undo FEMA, but then, Michael, we'd have to do a better job at actually accounting for the money that we're sending to the states, that it isn't diverted the way that you just said.
So who's easier to hold accountable? A governor and a state rep and a state senator, or a congressman and a senator that sits in Washington, D.C.?
Obviously, the governor in the state, obviously.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, I think that you're right. What else is in the time we have remaining? And thanks for jumping on today, Michael. Really appreciate you. He's a dynamite talk show host. Go check out everything he does. Thesituation.io or .us. It's Michael Brown. What else is in the DHS that a layperson like me wouldn't know that you think is just ludicrous that it's even there? Anything?
The organization that they are trying to build this headquarters for is called the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency. It is a domestic spy agency. It's a domestic intelligence agency, which we already have in the FBI. So why do we have it in the FBI? We've got it in Homeland Security. We've got some of it in DOD. We have this intel community that is just so broad that I don't think most American citizens understand that almost every department and agency has some sort of intel component that is, in one way or another, and I mean this bluntly, spying on us.
Yeah, CISA is what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
So now that was the agency that actually had that disinformation governance board or whatever the crap that was. That had to go away because the one move was so weird. We all cried loudly enough and it went away. But they're still doing it, is what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely.
And that can go away. And that's the $524 million piece they wanted, really?
Right. Yes, to build a building, a $524 million building.
Can we assume that President Trump has good people around him that are making him aware of this?
I think so, and I'm doing everything I can, and I hope you and your listeners will too. On my X feed, it's at Michael Brown USA, and I have put a link to that GSA contract. And if people will just go retweet that and get that posted, we can get somebody's attention in D.C.
I'm going to go do it right now. Michael, I appreciate you jumping in the chair today. Keep up the incredible work, my man. Come back on anytime you've got some time and you want to talk about some stuff that's going on out there. Thank you, brother.
Good to see you, Joe.
All right, my man. We're back after this. Stay right here.